Hello, everybody. Welcome to another. This is a sort of hybrid presentation / Friday fun. We've done this once before and it worked really well. So I'm very pleased to be here with Sebastien Rochard from Arturia. They're in Arturia HQ. How are you, Sebastien?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, great. It's really good to see you. So is this the kind of the inner sanctum where all the nice keyboards get to sit that you model and whatnot?
It's one of them, yeah. Some of them are also like in many places in the offices. Some of them getting modeled as we speak. But yeah. There's a handful of them that we have modeled in the past in here.
Well, as you can see, you've got the Polybrute in front of you. I've got one here because I'm also going to be doing another part. The idea is I'm going to talk to Sebastien about the Polybrute. Polybrute is the Arturia 6-voice, really interesting analog morphing synthesizer that has become this sort of a very desirable instrument. I speak to a lot of people and people are going, "Oh, I really want to get one of those." It seems to have become a kind of hit in terms of the must-have analog poly, which must be very satisfying for you and the team. But congratulations on creating something so special.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a beautiful instrument. Of course I'm biased, but I absolutely love playing with this instrument. It's got a wonderful sound. It's so fun to create patches on it. It's so fluid in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the reasons we're here is because there is a new firmware out for it. Because obviously, sort of, while there is a lot of analog under the hood, there's also a lot of control that can be modified with firmware. So you've got a whole bunch of new features in here. I think one of the ideas is we're going to try, and you're going to tell me what's cool, and then I'm going to try and use some of those things a little bit later on in the second part of this video, where I use those in some of my Friday noodling. So what's the big headline stuff, Seb?
Okay, so let's have an overview. The first thing is, so as you said, the analog section, oscillator, mixer, filters, VCAs is purely analog, but then modulators, effects, the whole matrix, everything is digital. So there's a lot of improvement on the digital side. Let's start with the effects. So maybe we'll go with a simple pitch like this. So the first thing that we added is a new effect called ensemble, and it was designed by one of the engineers who worked on Polybrute, and it was inspired by some like the Solina ensemble effect. So it's basically kind of a chorus. It's like 3 delay lines with slow LFOs and fast LFOs at the same time. Solina was a monophonic. Here we have stereo. Well, monaural in a way. This one is a stereo, and it gives a very nice widening sound, which you can access as one of the extra alternate modulation effects. It's the last one, so I select it, exit. Let's have a listen. So, no effect. So the first part of the knob is a dry wet on the three LFOs, and then as I increase, there are 2 EQ curves. One that adds 2 bells on the low and the high, and one that adds a bell on the medium, which were 2 very typical EQ curves that were used on the Solina when using the ensemble effect. So. Here we can start to hear the EQ, and then morphing into the second shape of EQ. Very nice. It's a very powerful widening effect, in my opinion.
Excellent.
The second thing is we added, so there are 3 effect slots: modulation, delay, and reverb. And we have added a 4th effect section, which is an EQ. And the reason why we did that is, well, it was not really meant as a powerful sound design tool, but more as a way to have your your synths just sit well in a mix, or you have a preset and it just needs like no bass, but you don't want to use a filter to reduce the bass, so you can just use one of the, like a low cut or something like that, the patches.
And I'd imagine, because when I was playing with it here, I noticed. I mean, because it's not lacking in bass, the the Polybrute, that's for sure. So, but it's quite handy to actually be able to scoop a bit out, like you say, or create that sort of smile. I'll play it on the big system here on the other Polybrute, and you can really hear it because the audio we're getting is kind of over web. So let save your judgment. You can hear a line in, but it's a handy thing actually, and that's saved per patch, right?
It is. It's one of the effects. All the effect section is saved per patch, and you can pick one of the slots. And it's great that it doesn't steal one of the 3 effects, that it can be added on top of the other 3. Because you can still have a chorus, delay, reverb, and add that little bit of EQ touch. Yeah.
Excellent. I mean, one of the big ones that I saw as well is you've done quite a lot of the display work. So now we can actually see the status of what's going on, the sort of knob positions, and also the envelope kind of curves and whatnot. I mean, obviously, we won't be able to see that on what you've got here because we just don't have the video. Yeah. I'll show that as well. And that's actually, but operationally, that's quite a big difference, and that makes it feel a lot more in touch with what's going on.
It is, and it's something that was widely requested by our users, and it's true that it adds a lot. I think part of the design philosophy of Polybrute, and arguably all the Brute instruments, was more focusing on the sound, and not really an instrument that is designed around a display. I mean, like the Matrix had an e-paper display, so in a way it was really almost like at the essence of the instrument, that we didn't want it to be something centered around the display. On this one, it's a beautiful OLED display, and it's a lot more flexible, and we use it quite a bit. But we had stayed away from doing too much visual feedback. But people like it, it just feels it. It adds value. It shows you where the preset value is, and so it makes sense. Yeah.
The really nice one that I thought as well was that this duophonic aftertouch, which I think is really interesting because it makes it feel like Poly without it needing to be Poly. Can you take us through that?
And the way it works is that instead of the keyboard is monophonic aftertouch, so there's no way to know which key is being pressed. For the keyboard, this or this is the same. Now, what we do in the software is that we only apply aftertouch to selected notes. So the default mode, the default mode is still aftertouch on everything, but the new duophonic mode is that the last note that you play is going to have aftertouch. So if I do, there's no aftertouch, and I'm not getting this.
Yeah, that's nice. It's really easy. It's nice for playing a bed and then having a lead which is more expressive on the top, as you're demonstrating there.
The way it works is that it's not precisely the last note. It's actually like any group of notes that you play in a short time frame is going to be treated as the last note. So if I do something like, I'm going to get all 3 of them of the upper chord. And if I play everything, I'm going to get all the notes.
So you can sort of play it in the same way that you play a monosynth, where you can use the note priority almost as a creative method of expression. Nice.
Yeah.
I'll be using that.
Right, so last note aftertouch. There are 2 other modes which let you only apply aftertouch to the lower or upper part when doing split patches. I won't go into detail, but basically it's a bit more flexible.
Yeah, okay, got you. There's another feature, isn't there, which synth accuracy, which sort of sounds interesting. Synth accuracy is it's a weird one because, as we know, when you're making an analog poly, one of the biggest tasks of an engineer is getting it to be in tune and getting it to scale properly and getting it so that it's repeatable. But you don't want it too accurate because sometimes that can sound too clinical, right?
Well, sometimes you want it accurate, sometimes you don't. It really depends on the patches, and it's great that you're able to to choose between both. And yeah, like it's something that we've been studying over the years, especially with the V Collection instrument, which are like software emulation of vintage gear. And on these instruments, we just try to figure out what makes the particularities of the sound. The fact that all voices on an analog synth have differences is a strong part of what makes it an organic sound, I would say. And on Polybrute, we used to have that on pitch. There was a way to just make sure that the voices have some small pitch variations. And now in version 2, it also applies to, well, actually quite a few parameters, all the ones that we felt made sense in emulating analog inaccuracy. But now pulse width, waveform selection, volumes, cutoff, resonance, envelope times, all of those can have some dispersion. And what I mean by dispersion is not just randomization. It's exactly like what happens on a fully analog vintage synth. Each of the voices is going to have its own state, its own level of accuracy, and they're going to loop. When you play the 6 or 8 voices, each one is going to have the same sound, and that's an important trait in synth accuracy. It's very different from just randomizing. So let's listen without any accuracy. So presumably perfect sound. So there's a bit of velocity. It's good. And now if we add analog accuracy, so some notes are going to be longer because the envelope times are modified. Some notes are going to be shorter. The pulse width also gets modified. If I turn it off, back on.
So it's a fixed thing. There's not a kind of degree of how much you make it do that. It's just sort of on or off. Is that what you're saying?
You have 4 settings for pitch: off, mild, and wild. And the 2 mild is either linear or exponential, which kind of emulates how imperfect linear VCOs or exponential VCOs behave. So we have both, and then wild, which adds, more variation. And then so this is for pitch, and we have also off and 3 values for everything else, the things we added, like pulse width, cutoff, resonance, all of that. Yeah.
So, I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of stuff going on there. I mean, there's chord mode, I think, was a big one as well, because that's a nice addition. So maybe we should have a look at that. And I'll use that in one of my patches as well, I think.
I hold the polyphony button, I enter some notes, and then it's basically going to be my chord. The first note that I play is the referent, I would say the root note of the chord, and I can play note below or above. So if I do, and it's really nice. It's really nice. Like, I would say one way to use it is as a facilitator. Maybe some people don't know how to play keys, or they just want to get like that housey chord vibes. But it can actually be a sound design tool. Like, if I just go with a very quickly write a init patch with let's say this, like kind of a steel tone like this, and then do like, you can get like organ vibes just by stacking the notes with the chord, and
And the one thing I did notice in the firmware, that's saved with the patch as well, isn't it? As far as I understand.
It is. The chord. If you write a chord, it is saved. It is saved with the patch. If you exit chord, you need to write it again afterwards to get the chord.
Yeah. Wow. So what else then? Before I kind of carry on and do my noodling as part of the Friday Fun, what else have we missed? I mean, it seems like quite a lot in this already.
Yeah, there's a tiny feature. We can just give it a look. It's on the LFO3. So LFO3, for those who are not familiar, is it was kind of inspired by some of the like function generator, like the universal slope generator, or some of the Eurorack modules, where you have a rise section, a fall section, and then you can choose the curve to make it more exponential or more logarithmic, and you can choose the symmetry, like how the length ratio between the rise and the fall curve. So I don't know if we do some modulation. I'm just going to use the LFO3 on my cutoff deck. Let's get rid of the accuracy. But the analog accuracy also changes the rate of the LFOs, so things kind of flutter away. Just add some delays. Beautiful stuff. Let's get rid of it for now, so we can hear. All right, so symmetry. So is it emphasizing the attack or the release phase? Right, of course. And then the curve. So the default curve of LFO3 was it rises exponentially and falls exponentially. So it's a, it kind of creates a spike. And now, if I just go settings and move this knob, I can turn it to inverted. And now it's going to have a logarithmic rise and an exponential fall, or the opposite. So at the extremes, it kind of nears a square wave. In both ways, but you can get all variations in the middle. Yes, so that's, I mean, it's a small feature. It's very interesting in some situations, but yeah. The last thing I should mention is that there are 64 new presets. So download the newest Polybird Connect application, and you're going to find the 64 new presets in a project, so browse projects, and you can either just send the whole project to the Polybird, or you can drag and drop. It's on page 5 of the project, page 5, and you can just drag and drop and put it on one of the 8 pages of your Polybird if there's one that you haven't touched, so that you don't get rid of your user presets. There are some beautiful presets in there. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that's a great sentiment. Okay, well, thank you, Sebastian. We will now move over to my very own, well, it's not mine, it's the loaner that I will now noodle on. So we'll see you all later. So, Sebastian, thanks very much for talking to us. We'll see you next time.
Sure. See you, Nick. Bye.
Okay, so let's start with that new ensemble effect. I've got what would be the basis of a Selena type sound here, which if you've never heard one without the effects on, sounds remarkably thin. This is not. I'm going to bring another VCO in here, detune, and you also see that we've now got the display of the parameters here, and also the envelope shapes. You have to excuse me, there is a bit of drilling going next door. There's not much I could do about that. So let's bring in this intensity of the modulation. The ensemble, which I select by going to Alt, and I'm choosing ensemble. That's the new one. So I've got actually, let's start a little bit of now bring, really widens up. And you can hear the change in the sound there, that scoop that he was talking about, Seb. got a little bit of modulation, which I'm throwing in number 7 on the LFO3. 7, is it? Yeah. So that's now modulating this parameter. Got a bit of aftertouch. Really nice. We get that real high. They used to use that a lot of pedal notes. Really piercing, but just in disco you just have this little pedal. As ever, this part is really about just putting a couple of synths together, having a jam, but I'm showing you the oh, that's nice. Let's bring a bit of reverb and delay up. Okay, let's try another sound, because there's some other parameters I want to illustrate from what Seb was talking about a little earlier. So in this patch, I've just got a single oscillator at the moment. Bring the second one in. Just sequencing up and down. Now if I bring that one over to pulse width, starts to sound really John Carpenter-esque. Bring a bit of delay and a bit of reverb in. So let's just go and have a look at that analog accuracy. It's quite subtle, so I'm going to go straight linear, exponential, wild. And you can hear, it's not wild, it's not wonky as Seb said, but it's got brings a bit of life, and then we can do the same with the other parameters, which is things like filter tracking, pulse width. Starting to sound like sort of John Carpenter-esque, but I've added this extra little twist, so I've got a 5th on oscillator 1. So if I just stop that a sec and we go now into sort of played mode, the other thing that I want to show is this duophonic aftertouch, which in practice is actually very expressive. So again, we just go to settings, press and hold, expression control, aftertouch settings. I've got it set to duophonic here. So now that enables me to, oops, take the sequencer off. See, the top line has its own aftertouch voicing, and the bottom line, ditto. It's quite clever the way it works, because it's just, whoops, touched the pitch there. And in practice, it really feels like you've got, not MPE, but polyphonic aftertouch, because most of the time you're generally expressing you know, one hand over the other rather than individual fingers. I mean, yeah, some people are good at doing that, you know, maybe individual fingers in a chord, but it's harder to play. But this gives that impression. Anyway, that's also a nice one. So, and this is really just a sort of overview to try and illustrate some of the things that this new firmware does, but also incorporate it into a Friday Fun Jam, which again, the idea is really pick up a synth, get jamming, have some fun with it. You know, that's the idea with the Friday Fun series. As ever, if you want extras, I'm going to put some of these patches up on Patreon, which you can join us here. There's also ad-free versions of our monetized videos that you can see over there. So if you fancy joining us, please do. But now I'm just going to play you out with some more Arturia Polybrute noodling that has the version 2 software, which in fact is a free download to registered users. You just log into it, connect via Polybrute Connect and do the business. There's also 64 extra patches which you can download too. Anyway, that's it. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.